Ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. On tonight's programme, the police say it appears the Christchurch mosque massacres are the actions of a lone gunman. The man accused of carrying out the attack, Brenton Tarrant, appears in court charged with a single count of murder. More charges will follow. We hear from a critically injured father who speaks from his hospital bed. And the Prime Minister signals gun law reform is coming after it's alleged the prime suspect had 5 weapons, 2 of them semi-automatics. He had a gun licence too. Meanwhile, thousands gather to spread messages of hope and support in defiance of terror.
Here. 39 are still being treated in hospital. The accused, Brenton Tarrant, has been charged with murder and was remanded in custody after his first appearance in court this morning. The Prime Minister has defended the response time of police, saying Tarrant was in custody 36 minutes after the first emergency call was received.
The offender was mobile. There were 2 other firearms in the vehicle that the offender was in, and it absolutely was his intention to continue with his attack.
Jacinda Ardern says the 2 police officers who apprehended him deserve a commendation. Ms Ardern has spent the day in Christchurch, visiting families of the victims, meeting with local Muslim leaders and holding a top-level security briefing with police. She says the country's security threat level remains high to allow authorities to respond quickly to any events.
It means that we leave nothing to chance. Yes, we appear to primarily be dealing with one primary perpetrator, but we want to make sure that we don't take anything for granted in ensuring New Zealanders' safety.
Ms Ardern says Muslim New Zealanders are worried about their security and police will remain at mosques throughout New Zealand until it's deemed there's no longer a threat. A loophole in the law may have allowed Tarrant to get hold of semi-automatic weapons. The Police Commissioner, Mike Bush, says he had only an A-category firearms licence, which would have prevented him from legally owning that type of gun. But Mr Bush says it may still have been possible for him to have bought his firearms legally and then to have altered them to turn them into semi-automatic weapons.
A Category A firearm holder can purchase the firearms without the magazines or the things that will enable them to be in the state that they were. I was very happy to hear the Prime Minister's comments this morning that there will be a change in the gun law.
Mike Bush. The National Rifle Association is surprised that Tarrant got a firearms The National Rifle Association is surprised that Tarrant got a firearms licence given how he expressed himself online. Police do background checks and say that may or may not include looking at an applicant's online activity. The Rifle Association's Nicole McKee says the case surprises her.
Yes, it does. And so we expect that police will investigate thoroughly how that came about and will look at their own internal processes around that.
Nicole McKee of the National Rifle Association. Hawke's Bay Hospital is in lockdown as the police respond to an unspecified threat. A witness says a police car's blocking the entrance to the hospital on Omahu Road, turning people away. The Hawke's Bay District Health Board confirmed the hospital was in lockdown but couldn't say more. The police say the hospital is closed as a precaution and anyone with minor injuries is asked to avoid the hospital and see their local GP. Mourners have been laying flowers to remember the 49 people killed at the 2 mosques. There have been floral tributes around the Garden City, including near the scene of the first attack on Deans Avenue, where a sign's been put up with the words, "This is not New Zealand." One person, Sue, says the reality has hit home today.
We just feel quite flat about the whole thing today. It's overwhelming and just sickening, really. I really feel for these people they've lost.
Sue, who with her husband took flowers to the Deans Ave tribute. Thousands of people packed a vigil at Auckland's Aotea Square today. Some held banners calling for love in the face of hatred, while others wept quietly as various speakers took to the stage. One of those, a Muslim woman, Monique Pearl Pritchard, says she's overwhelmed by the support her community's receiving. She says having people from all walks of life at the vigil was beautiful and heartwarming. Other vigils throughout the country are planned. The accused, Brenton Tarrant, is believed to have travelled to Pakistan in the past year. Jacinda Ardern says he travelled to a range of countries and had sporadically been in and out of New Zealand for periods of time. She's asked intelligence agencies to piece together the nature of that travel, how he obtained a firearms licence in November 2017, and also to look into the purchasing of weapons a month later. Tonight's Super Rugby match between the Crusaders and the Highlanders in Dunedin has been cancelled. New Zealand Rugby's Chief Rugby Officer Nigel Cass says the decision was made this morning after meetings between the two teams. He says the police and venue management felt the match could go ahead, but the teams wanted to call it off as a mark of respect to the victims.
The Crusaders players living in that community, their families directly impacted in terms of lockdowns. You know, the victims were their neighbours and fellow members of their community, you know, so the right thing to do to show the most respect is to cancel the game. Nigel
Cass. The Slayer and Anthrax concert tomorrow night at Horncastle Arena has also been cancelled. That's the news. Now the forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waitomo, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty in the central high country, fine breaks and cloud with isolated showers, mainly afternoons and evenings. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine today, mostly cloudy tomorrow with a few showers. Wairarapa and from Taranaki to Wellington, fine at times. A few showers for Wairarapa, Wellington and Kapiti tonight or early tomorrow. Nelson and Marlborough, cloudy at times with isolated showers, clearing early tomorrow, then mainly fine. Buller and northern Westland rain, sometimes heavy, easing to a few showers by this evening. Southern Westland and Fiordland, fine today, tomorrow a few showers. Canterbury, some cloud with a few showers until early tomorrow. Otago and Southland, cloudy spells near the coast, but mainly fine inland. And the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy with a few showers until tomorrow morning. It's almost 7 minutes past 5.
And you're with Checkpoint. We will be with you for the next hour. My name's Lisa Owen. The world has seen its first glimpse of the man police say is responsible for the terror attack. 28-year-old Brenton Harrison Tarrant appeared in the Christchurch District Court just before 11 o'clock this morning. Our court reporter, Annika Smith, was there. And a few minutes ago, I asked her about that court appearance.
Well, Lisa, it was a very tense but very brief hearing at the Christchurch District Court this morning. The accused entered the dock in a white gown. It was made of thick material, and his hands were handcuffed in front of him, and he had a cut to his upper lip. Now, he surveyed the courtroom from left to right several times. He took in the public gallery. It was packed with local and international media. He seemed very calm in his demeanour. Possibly smug, and he seemed to enjoy the attention that he was getting from all of those journalists that packed the public gallery.
Did he speak at all?
He didn't say anything throughout the entire appearance. He seemed very, very quiet, quite subdued, and he just stood silently between two police officers.
How would you describe security there? Was it beefed up for the appearance?
Security was very, very high. From about 8:30 in the morning, journalists arrived at the courthouse and we were waiting to hear when we would be able to get in. When we were ushered in eventually, only accredited media was allowed through the security screening. No public was allowed through. We were ushered in groups of 6 up to level 3 of the courthouse into courtroom 12. And in there would have been a dozen security staff, more than is normal, that's for sure.
So what actually happened during this brief appearance?
So the man appeared before Judge Paul Keller, and the court heard that one murder charge had been laid. He was charged with murdering someone who we can't name because the judge made an interim suppression order on that victim's name in respect to their family. We heard that the one murder charge had been laid, but it's likely that many more or some more will be. he did not apply for bail, so he was remanded in custody, and he also didn't seek interim name suppression, so we were able to name him after today's appearance.
And he will appear again, not for some time, April, is that right?
Yeah, April. Just as a matter of course, he would normally appear for a murder charge in the district court, and it would be bumped up to the High Court. So he's due to appear in the High Court at Christchurch on the 5th of April.
There was another interesting development too, wasn't there, Annika, which is a Christchurch teenager who is now before the court as well. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so while I was going through the charging documents for the day, I also found another charging document in relation to this 18-year-old teenager who is from Christchurch. Now, he has been charged with, under the Human Rights Act, with intent to excite hostility against people in New Zealand by publishing written material which is insulting. Now, we don't yet know if this is linked to yesterday's shooting, and police haven't confirmed that, but he is due to appear, this teenager, back in the Christchurch District Court on Monday, so we're hoping to find out more then.
And that's our court reporter Annika Smith, who was at the appearance this morning of Brenton Tarrant. The police now say it appears the shootings in Christchurch yesterday were the actions of a lone gunman. Commissioner Mike Bush briefed the media this afternoon on the latest on the gunning down of 49 people at 2 mosques. One person, Brenton Tarrant, has been charged with murder. Our reporter Rachel Graham has more from Christchurch.
Less than 24 hours after the shootings, Mike Bush said he hadn't seen anything that would suggest there was more than one person involved in the shootings, which happened just 7 minutes apart. Police are still trying to work out the exact involvement of a couple who are the only other people still being held in custody over the incident. Mike Bush praised the actions of the arresting officers who rammed the shooter's car off the road.
Not only were there IEDs in that vehicle, so it was a very dangerous manoeuvre, there were also firearms in that vehicle. So our staff, who were well equipped, did engage with that person and again put themselves in real danger to keep the community safe.
Meanwhile, a loop in the law may have allowed Brenton Tarrant to get hold of the semi-automatic weapons. Mike Bush says he only had a Category A firearms licence, which would have prevented him from legally owning semi-automatic weapons. But it may still have been possible for him to have bought his firearms legally and then to have had them altered into semi-automatic weapons.
A Category A firearm holder can purchase the firearms without the magazines or the things that will enable them to be in the state that they were. I was very happy to hear the Prime Minister's comments this morning that there will be a change in the gun law.
In addition to the 49 people who have lost their lives, the Canterbury District Health Board's Chief of Surgery, Greg Robertson, says 39 people remain in hospital. 7 patients have been discharged.
The others included a 4-year-old girl who has been transferred to the Starship Hospital in Auckland in a critical condition. 4 patients died on their way into the hospital yesterday, dying before they arrived. Those injured ranged in ages from the very young to quite elderly patients.
Greg Robertson says it is very unusual for local surgeons to deal with gunshot wounds, and certainly on this scale.
As you would expect, the wounds from gunshots are often quite significant. We have had patients with injuries to most parts of the body that range from relatively superficial soft tissue injuries to more complex injuries involving the chest, the abdomen, the pelvis, the long bones and the head.
Greg Robertson says the staff also had to deal with operating while being watched over by armed police, as there were concerns that the hospital could also become a target.
We were in a lockdown situation. We had the police, armed police, all around the hospital. It's an environment that we're obviously not used to dealing with. It slightly puts you a little on edge, someone with a gun standing beside you, but it does give you a degree of satisfaction that you're being protected in what you can do. Clearly we were asked to steer clear of windows, but we were not aware of any imminent threat on the hospital itself.
The Chief Executive of the Canterbury District Health Board, David Mates, says the dead have yet to be formally identified, but that was due to get underway this afternoon when the Chief Coroner arrived in Christchurch. Mr Mates says identification is a very formal and important process.
We're also very cognizant there's a very challenging process to go through still at the moment in terms of the identification process of the deceased, in terms of burial processes, and also remembering and recognising this is a crime scene as well.
David Mates says they also recognise the pressures and challenges for the families. According to Islamic tradition, a body should be buried as soon as possible after a death. In Christchurch, people have been leaving flowers at the cordons around the two mosques.
We just feel quite flat about the whole thing today.
It's kicked in.
It has. It's overwhelming and just sickening, really. We really feel for these people they've lost.
We feel for these people, really feel for them. It's disgusting. We don't hate, we've been talking about it in the car. It's terrible.
And so you've brought some white flowers, why is that?
Because white in Islam is symbolic of purity, and these people that died were pure in heart. They were praying when they were gunned down. 49 flowers in here for each of those that have died, and they come from my garden, so they were picked with love.
It is believed that the prime suspect, Brenton Tarrant, was living in Dunedin from at least August 2017 and travelled through the Middle East and Afghanistan last year. Cordons are still in place and armed officers are standing guard at the house where he was believed to live in the suburb of Somerville. One Somerville resident, Wendy Bin, says it is normally a quiet neighbourhood.
Which really is quite terrifying to think if there was anything like suggestion of, blimmin' bombs and making stuff and planning all these terrible things, that it's just down the road is just terrifying. A terror that's been shared now by the country and the rest of the world. In Otatahi for Checkpoint, ko Rachel Graham, Tēnei.
Among the 11 people critically injured in yesterday's attack was Wasim Al-Sati and his 4-year-old daughter. Mr Al-Sati, who was shot 3 times, spoke on Facebook today from his hospital bed.
Hi guys, how are you? I'm very sorry to miss your calls and text messages. I will not be able to answer any one of you now. I am really tired. Okay guys, please pray for myself, for me and for my daughter. Hopefully she will be so much better. Okay. I'm just posting this video to show you that I am fully okay. Okay, guys? Well, it's been a pleasure to know you all, guys. Thank you for all the support and all the help.
And that was mosque shooting victim Wasim Al-Sati speaking from his Christchurch hospital bed earlier today. The Prime Minister has ordered a sweeping review of laws ranging from border security, how watch lists are managed, to firearms licensing. She has 2 other pressing questions. Jacinda Ardern has asked for assurances Brenton Tarrant had done nothing before the attack that should have put him on the radar of law enforcement agencies, and that any concerns raised by Christchurch's Muslim community are dealt with properly. Our political editor, Jane Patterson, joins us now from Parliament. Jane, a big focus on gun laws. What could happen with the law change there?
Well, Jacinda Ardern at her briefing at Parliament this morning making no bones about the fact that the government will change the firearms law, and probably that would mean the licensing regime and the penalties regime as well. So more information coming out from Commissioner Mike Bush today about the weaponry and the licence of Brenton Tarrant, and he said that he actually had a Category A or a standard firearms licence. RNZ's been told by a Dunedin sports store that he bought a rifle there. It wasn't a semi-automatic, and Commissioner Mike Bush was saying that he could have altered it to turn it into a semi-automatic weapon, which would be illegal to use under the licence that he actually had. So a couple of years ago in 2017, a parliamentary committee spent about a year looking into illegal firearms in New Zealand. They came back with 20 recommendations. The police minister at the time, Paula Bennett, picked up 7 of those. They included bringing in firearm prohibition orders, reviewing penalties in the Act, and also making it harder for gang members to get firearms. But among the recommendations that were rejected included requiring the police to record serial numbers of all firearms upon renewal of licence or inspection. And that's a big debate, whether owners themselves should be licensed or whether individual guns should be registered, and also requiring a licence to possess ammunition, and also looking at the creation of a new category for semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. Now, Jacinda Ardern today indicating that it's quite possible they will look to ban semi-automatic weapons altogether. Now, the issues traversed in this report are very likely to be the ones that officials are looking at now, but obviously there's going to be a lot more urgency and a greater appetite to get on and make these changes.
Yeah, well, how big do you think that appetite is? As you point out, we've only not so long ago had this review, and the national government, the then national government, basically discarded a number of the recommendations. Have you had an opportunity to sort of canvass who's going to get in behind this?
Look, all we can go on is what happened back in 2017. Now, the hunting lobby has been very strong in its lobbying. It argues that these changes wouldn't help the illegal weapon problem in New Zealand, that actually it would target and it would disadvantage people who are already willing and following the law, people like farmers and hunters who are already in the system, and it wouldn't help do anything about illegal firearms or firearms that had sort of dropped off the radar. Now, on the other hand, you have the police who have really been pushing hard for changes that they want to lock down and clamp down on gun use, including being able to track those individual weapons. Now, I imagine those different sides haven't changed, but obviously in this environment, the views of those opposed to it may not hold so much strength in the current climate when we have an incident like this. But that's when the government really has to weigh making law changes in a knee-jerk, responsive, reactive fashion, as opposed to really looking at what's going to be good law.
We have a national security threat level which is high at the moment, but what has the Prime Minister signalled about more long-term changes?
So the national security threat level basically means that border control and border checks and anything security related can really be boosted up high, and there doesn't need to be a regulation or a law change to do that. But of course that's a temporary measure. But what Ms Ardern has indicated today is that she wants officials to look at all of those areas on a longer term basis. Are the checks at the border strong enough? Is the information sharing with Australia doing what it needs to? And she's also asking some very pointed questions about that watch list and that security alert process that the intelligence agencies use. Remember that Brenton Tarrant and none of the people in custody had come to the attention of intelligence agencies. So Jacinda Ardern has asked officials to go and look not only at what had happened in the past and whether he had done something that should have put him on their radar, but also at the future, if there's anything that they can do to improve that watch list process.
Thanks, Jane. That is Jane Patterson, who's joining us from Parliament there discussing, well, Jacinda Ardern has signalled that gun reform is imminent. It is 22 minutes after 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We're here until 6. I'm Lisa Owen. Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalziel is joining us now on the phone. Good evening, Ms Dalziel. What have you been doing today?
Good evening, Lisa. Well, today we've set up places where the community can, pay tribute and show their support and sympathy for the affected communities. There are hundreds and hundreds of floral tributes, both at the cordons, but we've set up a place away from the cordons by the Botanic Gardens, and the wonderful expressions that people have written. There was just one that I thought that I would share with you and your listeners, because it really did trigger for me exactly how people are feeling about all of our communities today. You are loved, you are welcome, you are Kiwi. and then hashtag they are us. And that really strong sense of solidarity and commitment to a whole community, embracing them as a community and saying, we are one, we are together, we stand with you, and you are part of us, you are us. And I thought that that's such a powerful message. The Prime Minister's been with us today, and she had also a very powerful message for those communities. She spoke to community leaders, she spoke to families of the victims, and she spoke to the first responders as well. And throughout the day, her compassion and her strong commitment to supporting all those that have been affected really shone through.
And you met with members of the Muslim community with her today, didn't you? Who were they?
They were community leaders, so we had people from the Multicultural Council, from the Migrant and Refugee Centre, from the different ethnic groups, of course, that were affected. I mean, Muslims don't just come from one country, they come from a number of countries, and so there were many who spoke directly to the Prime Minister about the concerns that they had.
Can you remind us, what are people in Christchurch, residents, supposed to do now? Are they still supposed to stay at home? What is the advice?
No, the advice at the moment is to go about your lives as usual, as best that you can. There's no need to take anything other than sensible precautions. The police will advise if that changes. I think that the strongest message, though, was not to gather together in large groups. So all of the large concerts, the Bryan Adams concert's been cancelled, the cricket's been cancelled, there's a concert on tomorrow night that's been cancelled.
That would mean no large gatherings of memorial or of a vigil nature either at this stage.
Yeah, I did speak to the police about that today, because I know that there's an absolute outpouring from the community and a strong desire to come together to show how they feel. But we don't want to run the risk. There is always risk in these environments, and we wouldn't want to expose people to that. We also want to work very closely with the community, and they are grieving. They are grieving, and it hurts. I was at the place where a number of the families were gathered today with the Prime Minister, and the feelings are very, very strong. They are very, very raw, and we need to give them time to heal, and then we will come together. It will be an appropriate time, but we are going to take guidance from the police.
There are also huge practical considerations here, aren't they? We have a large number of people who were killed in these incidents. What is the council able to do to help with the burial process and what happens next?
Look, there is work going on preparing the ground for the burials, and obviously with such a large number, great care is being taken to do that appropriately and carefully. It does take a little bit of time. It was very clear from the conversations that were had today that the separation of families from the bodies of their loved ones is the real hurt that's affecting that community right now. We're very mindful of the cultural need to bury their family member and to do so within 24 hours. That will have to be within 24 hours of the release of the family member from the hospital after identification and coronial requirements are undertaken. They are doing everything they can to make that process as quick as possible, and we're preparing the ground for the burials in the meantime.
Thank you for joining us again. Leanne Dalzell, the Christchurch Mayor there. Now, let's go now to our reporter Logan Church, who's at the entrance to the Botanic Gardens, where people are coming to lay floral tributes. He is with us via a live view. Hi, Logan.
Hi Lisa. Yes, as you said, we're here outside the Botanic Gardens in the middle of a city which can only be described as heartbroken more than 24 hours after those two deadly shootings yesterday afternoon that claimed the lives of 49 people. We're here in a crowd of a couple of hundred who have been coming thick and fast all day, dropping tributes off along the front wall of the Botanic Gardens. Those tributes have come in all forms. There are thousands of flowers, bouquets of flowers behind me of all colours, personal notes saying we stand with you, we are with you, we do not accept this is not us. Those have been tied to the fence behind me, ferns strapped to the fence as well, flags, banners, anything that Christchurch residents can do to show that they support our Muslim brothers and sisters is here behind me along the front wall of the Botanic Gardens. You can see the grief etched on the faces of everyone here today, whether they are Muslim or not. This is something that cuts all of us incredibly deeply. Of course, down the road at the moment, our Muslim community are also trying to figure out what's going on. They've been debriefed and they're now trying to figure out what their next moves are. There is obviously a lot of heartbreak down that way. I actually spoke to the son of the Imam at the Linwood Mosque where one of the shootings took place. His name is Muhammad Abdul Halim. He told me that he spent many hours fearing for the safety of his family.
I was working in Auckland on the North Shore. I got a phone call from a friend of mine frantically saying something is going on in Christchurch and that I should call my parents and check up on them. I tried calling my parents obviously several times, got nowhere, and my brother as well, who was present with my parents at the time. Obviously no replies. And then the news started sieving through the media. As soon as that started, sort of, the image became clear. I got on a flight and came here. Obviously, once I landed here and I got picked up by my friends, it started becoming a lot clearer the seriousness and the extent of the massacre that took place yesterday, and that certainly affected everybody from the community and in Christchurch as a whole.
Who is your father?
My father is Sheikh Ibrahim Abdul Halim. He is the Imam, or the leader basically of the Linwood Mosque, and at the time he was leading the prayer, for Jum'ah prayer at Linwood Mosque. In the back of Linwood Mosque was my brother, and in the women's section was my mother.
What condition are your parents and brother in?
My dad was fine, he was unhurt, and so is my brother. My mum was shot on the arm, and thankfully she is making a good recovery, and she has been discharged from hospital and now is present with the rest of the community.
And just quickly, what's happening at the Hagley College behind us?
They were debriefing people and just keeping them updated and informed about the situation at the moment and what the next steps are. Of course, have the ID process happen as soon as possible for those that are still present in both mosques, so that they can be laid to rest, and of course the family can start their grieving process.
You lost some close friends though as well, didn't you?
Did. Yep, I have. I lost a number of my very, very close childhood friends, all very, very good men. The three of them had young families, and we were all raised together here as immigrants from about 25 years ago. Most of us went to Christchurch schools and Canterbury University, and all of us were law-abiding good citizens, that family people that had no malice and no aggression and nothing but love for this country. Sorry.
You are New Zealanders.
We sure are.
You are New Zealanders.
Of course we are, and we're proud of it, and we've shown a great deal of support by everybody here, and it's been really good. We just want our loved ones back now. We want to lay them to rest. We want to bury who needs burying, and we want to look after the injured and the sick. And as a community, we're determined not to let this break us. And we will persevere through this.
Your 4 friends that you lost, what kind of men were they?
They were really good men. They were really, really good men. They were good in their jobs. They were good at home. Their parents, sons, and very, very close and dear friends that we will sorely, sorely miss them. And words just cannot explain how much we wish this never took place.
No one had any idea that this could take place, especially in a country like New Zealand.
Well, you know, we all think we're in heaven here. We're far away from the dramas. We're far away from the conflicts and the wars. But it's come to our doorstep. And when people were praying, they weren't expecting it. These are strong men that would have protected themselves and their families, but they had their backs turned, praying. They were only praying.
When you think of the men who did this, who fired those weapons...
Cowards. Cowards. And their punishment isn't going to be now. Their punishment is going to be in the hereafter, because we believe in God, and we believe in the day of judgment, and we believe that these guys will have their time.
What would you like New Zealand to know about the people who you've lost in this catastrophic...
Part of us. They were part of every New Zealander. They were good neighbours. They were great employees. There was business owners. There were good people that lived a good life here, and it's a real shame that it came to an end in this way.
What's the process from here?
Obviously, we're expecting the IDing process to take place over the next 24 to 48 hours. And the New Zealand Police and the New Zealand government has been very forthcoming with their answers and their expectations as to when this will happen, and they have been very good about it. And once the ID process has happened and we can identify the dead, they need to be obviously buried in the Islamic way, which doesn't really differ much in any other way. They just need to be prepped and buried accordingly. But within our faith, this needs to happen with urgency. Of course, we appreciate that there might be delays in terms of getting these people out of the 2 buildings.
How can New Zealand help you right now? What do you need most?
Pray for these people and their families. show your support, New Zealand. These were all your people. Stand behind their families. Stand together. Let this not divide us. Let's not let this cause rifts or cracks in our communities. We're all one. We've never been treated differently, and we don't expect to be, and neither would we. So support, and ask about your fellow citizen and your neighbour. Just ask. Yeah.
That from Mohammed Abdul Halim speaking to me a couple of hours ago. Just looking at some of these notes written by members of our community here in Christchurch, you can see the grief and the pain that this has caused our community. Just to read one handwritten cards, just to read it out. To all the people affected by these horrible events, our family is so sorry for all the pain and suffering your family has had to endure. We are so sorry that there is so much hatred and bigotry in the world. We are all people, no matter the colour, creed or religion. And that's just one of hundreds of notes here outside the Botanic Gardens along the front fence. Our home is your home. Home always, love over hate. This is your home. You should have been safe here. Love always wins. We will stay strong. We will stand with you. Those are messages of support from our Christchurch community, making it loud and clear that we are standing side by side with our Muslim brothers and sisters. Back to you, Lisa.
Logan, that is Logan Church, who's outside the Botanic Gardens in Christchurch. And if you're listening, there are hundreds of bouquets of flowers stacked up along the fence there, and many people have pinned cards to the wrought iron with very, very emotional messages. The prime suspect in the attacks, Brenton Tarrant, was active online expressing his views and held a standard firearms licence that allowed him to own limited capacity semi-automatic weapons. He got that licence in November 2017, even after a police background check into whether he was a fit and proper person. Phil Pennington reports.
The accused was active online before the attack, posting on social media sites. He had 5 guns, including 2 semi-automatics and a shotgun. The National Rifle Association's Nicole McKee says she's surprised, given the views he expressed online, that he had a firearms licence.
We expect that police will investigate thoroughly how that came about and will look at their own internal processes around that.
She says the association does not know how Brenton Tarrant got his 5 guns. He had been living in Dunedin. A sports store there, Hunting and Fishing New Zealand, says it has a record of selling a bolt-action rifle to a licence holder called Brenton Tarrant in 2017, but not any semi-automatics. Dunedin's 2 other gun stores would not talk to RNZ about any possible purchases, with one manager saying he could check, but it was up to the police to say. An Auckland firearms lawyer, Nicholas Taylor, says the police do not look at the online activity of a firearms licence applicant unless either of their 2 referees raise it as an issue.
Unless that person or those people do, then the police just don't have the resources to do that.
He says the referee's check doesn't take into account whether the 2 people put forward share similar views with the applicant.
That is one of the issues that has to be looked at.
That would have been obvious when they designed the system, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, we're looking at the Arms Act from 1983.
Nicholas Taylor says he's raised what he sees as this weakness in the firearms licensing system with the police and government over several years.
It was sort of either not having enough resources or sort of it's in the too hard basket, and also the resistance from the Minister of Police or Parliament to change the law.
Communications consultant Paul Brislin says Brenton Tarrant was very active online and not hidden within the dark web.
He seems to have been pretty public with regard to what he was saying prior to the attack. So you would hope that would have triggered at least some automated services.
Paul Brislin wants an inquiry, even a Royal Commission of Inquiry, into what's gone on. The National Rifle Association says an inquiry is needed to answer the questions around online vetting. Martin Cocker of online safety group NetSafe says how well police vet an individual's online activity needs looking into.
NetSafe will expect a pretty thorough review of all aspects of the use of online information to inform and prevent tragedies like this. we would expect that to be something that will happen in the near future.
They also say it is not only when referees raise an issue that they check on online activity. For Checkpoint, Phil Pennington.
Messages of love, hope and support for the Muslim community are ringing out at vigils and mosques around the country today. Mosques remain closed in the wake of the Christchurch attacks, but piles of flowers have been placed in front of shut gates along with signs, cards and candles. Peace vigils have been planned around the country for the coming days. Hamilton later tonight, Nelson and Wellington tomorrow and Dunedin on Thursday. They kicked off in Auckland's Aotea Square today, and Checkpoint reporter Nita Blake Person and cameraman Nick Monroe were there.
Kia ora, Lisa. Yeah, I am here above Aotea Square looking down where there's about 2,000 people gathered. The count was about 2,000 half an hour ago, and they just keep pouring in. Families, people from all communities, religions, races, walks of life. They're here to show their support. Many of them have brought placards. The overwhelming message is aroha, love, support and total intolerance for racism. They've brought flowers, they're laying those up on stage, and it's a beautiful scene down there where speakers are sharing messages of hope and unity at this time. Some of those speakers have included MPs from the Green Party, National, Labour. We've had the Auckland Mayor Phil Goff, all showing support for everyone in Christchurch, but also the Muslim communities across the country. We've also had a performance from the Auckland Choir. They had an emotional rendition of Stand By Me, which really seems to have summed up the mood here today. Everyone supporting one another at this time. There is a heavy police presence, dozens of officers and additional security dotted throughout the crowd. They are here obviously working, and there was a focus on safety and what people would need to do if there was any event. But a lot of those officers are also here participating. They're hugging the crowd and showing their support during this peace vigil at this time. We spoke to quite a few members of the crowd earlier, and here's some of their messages.
I am also a former refugee who came to New Zealand from Bosnia and have been through ethnic cleansing. And it just shook me to pieces that something like this could happen in New Zealand where I came to take refuge.
It's not just the Muslim community which is here. If you look around, it's basically every race is here to sort of address the situation. This could have happened anywhere. It could happen out open in a cafeteria. So it's just good to see that everyone's coming together and addressing the situation.
It was really important for me as a young black Muslim woman to be here today and to speak. And I think, just having the opportunity of being surrounded not just by Muslims but everyday New Zealanders is actually part of the healing process. And I think to hear from the different voices is actually really quite important at this moment in time.
For New Zealanders in general, just getting together to show that we do respect all cultures and all religions. It doesn't matter who you are, but yeah, we're just here to support you because these are our people, and that's what I'm here for, and for my family and for everyone else's family.
Today I will not be graceful and I will not be articulate, and for that I apologise in advance, but my heart is broken and I am feeling equal parts of grief and equal parts anger, and I will not apologise for my anger.
Quite numb until probably now, and and just looking at all of these people here and seeing the shared sense of loss and grief and loss of innocence, right?
We hoped, we prayed this day would never reach the shores of Aotearoa. But talking to many Muslims across New Zealand, there were many of us who braced ourselves for this.
In the next coming weeks, I know that we'll have a lot of difficult yet courageous conversations, and I think we need to make sure that we have them. We can't sweep it under the carpet and pretend that it doesn't exist. She'll be right is not the attitude that we need to take with this, and so it needs to be taken seriously.
And those were voices from the Peace March at Aotea Square. Nick Monroe and our reporter Nita Blake Person were there. That piece will be up online if you're listening and want to go and look at some of the pictures. As the enormity of yesterday's massacre sinks in, people have been rallying around the country to show support for the Muslim community at mosques around New Zealand. It was a sombre atmosphere at the Wellington Islamic Centre as people of all ages and backgrounds laid flowers at the locked gates and covered the footpath path with chalk messages of solidarity and love. Nuruddin Abdul Rahman came hoping to find a safe place to pray. But when he saw the outpouring of support, he was moved to give an emotional address to the crowd.
I want the world to see it. This is New Zealanders. You just touched me inside. And all I want to say is thank you very much, New Zealand. I will always remember. This is very touching, I'm telling you. I'm out of words. Thank you very much. I don't even know why I was crying. It just broke me. I just break down. All those New Zealanders standing here, all from 2 years old girls to 18, some of them really old people here supporting us means a lot for me. And I was walking this way, people giving me a hug. This is really incredible things for me.
And during the day, hundreds of people visited the mosques, pay tribute and hear about the impact of the attacks in Christchurch on the wider community. Visual journalists Bex Parsons-King and Anna Tovey spoke to some of those who came to pay their respects.
At a time like this, it's really important for everyone to come together, and you know, that's what we do. We support each other, we show love, we show respect, and these people are all part of our community and they're important.
Just coming here and standing here and spending some time here just seemed like the only thing that you could do.
This is just everyone's worst nightmare come true. I guess we were naive to think something like this would never happen, but it still seems completely shocking. Maybe we have become complacent. But yeah, I still think there's so much we don't know about the motivations and where this guy came from. It's just so hard to put the pieces together. Well, it's heartening to see so many tributes left here. I think it's just part of trying to process what's happened. We just can't understand. And I think this is part of trying to understand it, especially for these guys as well. It's very, very difficult to explain what the hell's happened.
Who you are, who do you think you are that you target someone just because of their beliefs? They were peacefully having their prayer, you know, like I can't explain it, to be honest. I'm just like speechless. Normally I don't wear a scarf. I'm a Muslim, I'm from Morocco, but today I really wanted to wear a scarf to make a statement that, you know, we all the same.
I'm scared. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm scared there are white supremacists out there who always do post things very freely and who legally have access to guns. That's a very scary part for me.
We all say that it's not us, but I guess you have to face it and go, maybe there is an underbelly of that stuff in the country, and it's definitely not what we as New Zealanders want to represent ourselves as, and we're embarrassed and sad.
Absolutely.
But it's happened.
I'm not feeling safe, to be honest with you, no. Like, I had to check the door yesterday, and I had to ask someone to call, can you check the door? Like, is the door locked? You know, I never did that. I always open the door. I love the wind and the sun, and now I have to lock my door. They really took away that safety from us. For my kids to come, we've been here like for 18 years, and for my kids to come and tell me, is it okay for me to go to the city tomorrow? I'm safe? You know? It was heartbreaking. I'm hoping like in the future we'll get back that security and that, but for now, sorry, we don't. And I'm sure that many of the Muslim community are feeling the same.
It is 8 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're listening to a Checkpoint special on RNZ National. We're keen for your feedback. You can get in touch on the text 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Donations for the victims of the massacre are flooding into victim support via a Give a Little page. Its total at this point is about $1.5 million so far. Joining me to discuss where this money will be spent is Victim Support Chief Executive Kevin So. Kevin, are you overwhelmed by the amount of donations that have so far come in?
Well, what we're overwhelmed with is the generosity of New Zealanders and the international community so far. And we've received that huge response, and we're very grateful for that. What is it going to be used for? Well, it's pretty early in the process, and the priority so far has been to secure the funds. But, we'll work through a fair process to distribute the funds directly to victims based on their needs. And there'll be such things as accommodation, counselling, emergency grant, additional support workers to support them, and those are the needs that as we identify the needs of the victims.
Kevin, a lot of people listening to this will be wondering, aren't those things paid for already?
Not necessarily, because there are various systems that have to take place. But of course, we want to be ready and willing and available to these people's in need. And the big thing is the sheer scale of what we have to respond to.
Now, obviously there is a police homicide team on the ground and your organisation is supporting victims. How are you managing the balance between what's needed with a criminal investigation and meeting the needs of the families who want to follow their religion in burying their loved ones?
Well, that's something that we work very, very carefully with. And of course, this is a matter of real sensitivity for the victims. So the police, Red Cross and victim support and other agencies are working with those affected to ensure their cultural needs are respected, but also that their cultural safety is maintained. I must say that it would be very unfair on those families to make any sort of specific comment or make any commitment specifically, but I can tell you that it's a real fine balancing act that has to be struck. And there's no predetermination of what, the outcome and what the needs are.
Do you know at this stage whether any of those funds that have been donated will go to the families for funeral costs?
Well, look, that's something to be worked through, and we're treating this from a technical point of view as a homicide, and of course there's funding available for that kind of activities. So the answer is yes. Those funds will certainly be applied to assist in that respect.
Thank you for joining us this evening. That is Victim Support Chief Executive Kevin So. Messages of condolence are pouring in from around the world and from international leaders who are expressing their anger and sorrow. Flags are flying at half-mast in many overseas capitals, and the lights on the Eiffel Tower in Paris have been turned off as a mark of respect to the victims. Heads of state from Donald Trump to Angela Merkel have expressed their solidarity, while Pakistan's Prime Minister and other Muslim leaders also expressed anger at what they described as the demonisation of Muslims that fuelled such attacks. US President Donald Trump called Jacinda Ardern to offer his condolences.
Earlier today, I spoke with Prime Minister Ardern of New Zealand to express the sorrow of our entire nation following the monstrous terror attacks at two mosques. These sacred places of worship were turned into scenes of evil killing. You've all been seeing what went on. It's a horrible, horrible thing. I told the Prime Minister that the United States is with them all the way, 100%, whatever they need, we will be there. New Zealand has been a great friend and partner for many years. Our relationship has never been better. And what they're going through is absolutely terrible. So our hearts are with them and whatever we can do.
That's Donald Trump there. Jacinda Ardern says she told President Trump that she wanted sympathy and love for all Muslim communities, and the President agreed with that. Time for some of your feedback now. This person has got in contact and says the man who allegedly murdered 49 people is not a New Zealander. He is an Australian. He is a white supremacist. He is a terrorist. He broke New Zealand's current laws. We as New Zealanders have done nothing wrong. We are not terrorists. We obey our police department. We follow the laws of our land. We feel deeply for those of us who have fallen in Christchurch. Our pain is your pain. Kia kaha. Finally tonight, up in Auckland, St Paul's College Samoan group has been sending their love to the Muslim community and the city of Christchurch with a church hymn. Their head tutor, Albert Tupuola, says it was a hymn that was sung at the time of the 2009 tsunami in Samoa. He says their hearts go out to the people of Christchurch, and we thought it would be a fitting way to end the show tonight.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Paul Brennan. The Prime Minister is assuring the Muslim community in Christchurch there will be financial assistance available to those who lost family members in the mosque shootings, including for funeral costs. 49 people were killed in the attack and 11 remain critically ill in intensive care. 39 people are still being treated in hospital. The accused, Brenton Tarrant, has been charged with murder and has been remanded in custody. Jacinda Ardern has been meeting with families of the victims and representatives of Christchurch's Muslim community today. They've told her this